Thank you so much for coming to this live recording of Crime World here at CrimeCon. I'm joined by Tony Sales and Lennox Rodgers, and we're going to talk a bit about their lives, who they are, where they've come from, the path that they've taken in life. So I'm going to start with Tony. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and why you're here today.
Okay, I'm Tony Sales. I was formerly dubbed Britain's greatest fraudster. It's not something I'm proud of. I was young and stupid when I got involved in a life of crime. Kind of had 2 days old, both my mum and dad both leave, and that creates like a massive traumatic experience as a child that you probably don't realise at the time, that then plays into who I become, because I had such a bad life. There's bullying. I'm living with my nan and granddad who buy me 1.99 plimsolls that all the other kids are taking the piss out of me with. Like, I want to just be someone different. And that just leads me on a journey to just kind of understand what identities are and how to steal them, how to take them at will, and just become someone different in that moment every single time that I come out of there. And then go through a whole mad load of life stuff happening, eventually get caught for what I'm doing, jump bail, go on the run for 6 years, don't tell my wife or the kids, and then get caught 6 years later and have in prison, like when my wife finally decided that she would come and visit me, my son walks into the room, and as he walks in, he's crying in the visiting hall, yeah, and I can see him crying. I'm like, what's up with him? Like, I'm still in this selfish mode. I'm not even thinking about them. Like, what's up with him? Like, why is he crying? My wife goes, you're in jail again, you idiot. Like, why do you think that? So that, at that moment, for me, I realised, whoa, what am I doing? Like, everything that I've done, I'm now putting it on them, and now they're going to have to carry it. And if I don't stop it at this moment right now, they're going to end up in my life, because I'm really connected. I'm really doing this thing every single day of my life. There's no other way for them to go unless I change. And that is then a catalyst, and then I kind of changed, and then very quickly in the fraud industry. I don't think I'd said this in the book, but when I come out of prison, I went into the job centre, yeah, and they said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to work in fraud prevention. So they was like, what experience have you got? And I said, well, I've just come out of prison for it, yeah? And the woman just laughed at me. I was just like, look, I don't think you're ever going to be able to work in that industry, yeah? And I think that her saying that to me probably sparked me on more than ever before to go, no, I dare you. Like, I can't just settle for being a van driver because that's the experience that I've got, and that's what you're expecting me to be. I know I've got this whole skill set, and I can see what's coming. Yeah, so like being able to know what's coming and then get into the people, and then very quickly, once I started saying, so I said something in 2012 where I said data's the new cash. All these companies were talking about big data and how they would use it to get to what we now see as cookies and all this stuff that's playing out today. And I said, I'm just going to nick it on stage, and everyone was kind of, wow, like we never even thought about it at that point. And that got me a really good name to then go out there, and then the Vice documentary and all the other things that I then do after it and come. So that's why I'm sitting here today. So none of it was clever, big, flash. It was all bullshit. Yeah? And it's a total part of my life that I regret until the day I die, yeah? And I will forevermore try and fight back against the things that I did to try and help the others out there that get caught and stung every single day. So I did wrong, and I know that I can't just wash that away, and forevermore I'll have to fight that.
And quite like that, Lennox, you've had a similar experience in life. You had a past, you came along, you turned things around, and now you're helping other people. So tell us a little bit about your life and your past and why you're sat here today.
Yes, I was born in Oxford to Indian and Caribbean parents in the early 60s, and they took me back to the Caribbean for a few years and then brought me back to England. I grew up in Oxford around gangs. It was very racist. There were still signs on the windows: no blacks, no Irish, no Chinese, no dogs, no Indians, all that sort of stuff. And when I went to school in Oxford, there'd be a white who would stand in the middle of the playground and shout blacks against whites. And there were like 7 or 8 of us from mixed backgrounds, Indian, African, Chinese, and mixed race, which back then they called them, half caste then. And we would stand one end and the rest of the school the other end. The only people that would come on our side was the Scots and the Irish. And then we'd have teachers in the classrooms watching this every morning from about 8:30 till 9, this fight, and they'd place bets and we'd get hiding, and, sometimes we'd have a good day, but I went through that and gangs would wait outside the school for us to come out and beat us up. We'd try and get out the other end of school. They soon got wise to that, and I couldn't go from my house to anywhere without meeting gangs. And so I used to have to try and find a way to get from your house to the shops and wherever you wanted to go. I went through school fighting racism, and then I got into care system because of my bad behaviour. I was in lots of children's homes and observation assessment centres and places. They were going to send me to a children's prison, Borstal, and detention centre, but they gave me a chance to go to an approved school. And after I was there, I went to try and join the army to be a mechanic. And they were racist at the Army Careers Office. They said I got 75 out of 100. I wanted to be in the REME, and they should have said, why don't you go in the transport unit and then transfer from there? But they said, try again in 6 months, and my education dropped, so I didn't get to do that. But through a series of events, I didn't get on well at home. I got beaten a lot. There was a lot of domestic violence, got beaten with the belt. And so I ended up getting involved in gangs. I was headhunted because of my violence. I was headhunted by a gang who were a drug dealing gang, and they had a group of guys who used to be enforcers for them, but they got themselves into a situation where they tried to rob another drug dealer with imitation firearms, and the drug dealer pulled out a real gun, and they jumped out of a third-story house window and broke arms and legs. So they came to me and they sent me on suicide missions to get money back from other drug dealers, plus score drugs from gangs in Brixton, and I always came back with the goods. And I was also headhunted by an organised crime gang that had lots of business people. There were bankers, my mentor in the gang owned a jeweller's shop, lived at the back of Oxford Street, was chauffeur driven. We had people from various walks of life, and they paid people for inside information, and they're still going today. It's very difficult to stop that kind of thing, Our gang would approach people, and it's very easy to offer them a few grand for them to do things for you. So I did with the gangs a lot. I did 22 armed robberies. I was in and out of prison for 21 years. I'd done about 15 years of that time, and I had an experience in London. It was so weird because I was about to die. I was homeless. I lost everything and I was about to die, and I had an experience in London that made me get up from where I was and go and hand myself into the police station because I just stabbed someone. I used guns and knives in my criminal times. I just stabbed someone, and because I thought the last thing I heard the judge say to me, you stab someone else and you'll go to prison for the rest of your life. And I wanted to throw my life away. And this experience started me on the road to change.
And it started you not just on the road to change, but also led you to this career, both of you now, where, you advise on cybercrime. Lennox, you also have your own charity, Refocused, which essentially, the message of that is you want these young people who are in crime or coming out of it or want to get out of it, and you want to refocus what they're doing away from crime. Because obviously I think it takes a certain amount of ambition you've both clearly had in life, and unfortunately, you were, through your own circumstances, ended up using that for criminal careers, but now, you still have that drive and ambition and are doing incredible things in your own lives. So tell me a little bit about Refocus. I've met some of your wonderful volunteers over the weekend and they have incredible stories, the things that you've helped them do. I can see how they're developing and becoming incredible young people. You meet a young person that maybe in a gang is looking to leave or has come out of a gang and needs that sort of mentorship of, because some criminals don't know how to live a normal, honest, per se life. What's your first kind of interaction with that person, and what's your sort of, when you speak to them, are you looking to see what they want to get out of life, or is it sort of depends on if they need different interventions?
Everyone's different, really. First of all, Refocus was set up in 2005, and it would be 20 years in January that it's been running. Initially, it was set up to work in Kent and Southeast London, but now because of the demand, we're finding we're all over the country. And the aim of Refocus is to help young people, especially, even though we work with people from, well, initially it was 8 to adults. The youngest person we've had to work with is 6 years old.
Wow.
It was because, an 8-year-old brought a knife into school to stab his classmate. But now recently, there's a 5-year-old who stuck a knife up to another 5-year-old's throat and threatened him. So we're having to do a lot of fun learning to educate these children. But we want to refocus lives for the better. And the way we do that, we try to change the way a person thinks, so they then change their own behavior, because you become the way you think. And when meeting a young person, we'll do a bit of an icebreaker, try and get to know them, find, they might be into football or something, and you might talk about that and break the ice with some nice, light conversation. And then it's about getting to know them. I share about myself and what I've been through, which then helps them to understand that to some degree I've been there and done it, and they feel a bit more relaxed to talk to me. And I try to tackle some of the deep-rooted issues that has caused them to want to walk down this path. So Refocus, it works with people that have got lived experiences. They may not have been to prison, but they have been drug dealers, they have been maybe alcoholics, or they may have had other lived experiences that are relevant to helping young people who are at risk of offending and ruining their life. Refocus uses a diverse set of people to reach them. And we're people that have not just come out of prison or come away from addiction and start doing this work. We've had to, get educated. I've got master certificates and various other qualifications. The people that we train, we get them qualifications. So they're not just using their lived experience. There is an element of education there too, because we want to provide a professional service. So that's what Refocus does. And we are in partnership with our sister charity that my wife runs, Safer Communities Alliance, because they tackle a lot of the issues families have. And it's very important not just to work with the young person, but with the families too. We're up and down the country and we're finding a lot of referrals from probation, from the police, from schools, from parents. My furthest away client is in Australia, someone who ran away from Ipswich to get away from a gang. That's what
Global reach. And Tony, you've also used, your experiences in your past to help others, maybe in a different way to Lennox, but also, you've taken your knowledge and you've made a career out of it. So tell us a little bit about We Fight Fraud.
So We Fight Fraud is a company I started at the same time as I started Underworld TV. And I've kind of been, so when I come out of prison, like I was saying earlier, I made a documentary with Vice called How to Get Away with Stealing. and it went viral. Yeah, I never even had a clue that what this thing was or anything. They weren't even called Vice then; they were called VBS TV, and it gets like 10 million views really quickly. And that kind of like I used it to then go to conferences because I knew, like, as great as all this is, there's no money in this, right? And I have a family to feed. I've got a real good message that I can send, but in order to survive, I need to become more corporate and I need to move into the corporate market. So while everyone else was focusing on Instagram and all those sort of things, I focused my attention on LinkedIn and very quickly gained a very good following of very influential people. And that then puts me in the room. So once I'm in the room, I was able to start talking about lived experience, which is when I hear people say it. So my business partner, who's a doctor in criminology, actually set all that up. She's the first person to start talking about lived experience as a university degree. She actually owns livedit.com that we parked because coming back to it in the future is something that we're all really passionate about because we've both lived it. So Nicola's lived that sort of life in the beginning of where she goes on to become a doctor in criminology. Now she's the CEO of We Fight Fraud because at the heart of everything that we do is lived experience, right? One of the first clients I had was a massive corporate. I'd been to a conference and I used to do these little tricks where we would invite people along and then throughout the week I'd hit them, yeah, in bits that I could get off of them. And we're just like, in one I had like, so B&Q went public with it. So I nicked an apron that they walk around in the stores with B&Q and I just hung it up on the side as like the head of loss for B&Q walked in the room. And I always remember Ray saying to me, he went, "That got me." He said, "As soon as you had that thing hanging there," he said, "What are you going to do with that?" I said, "I'm going to put it in and walk in your head office." And he went, "And do what?" I said, "I'm going to plug this in." And he went, "Oh my God." I said, "Because once I've got your data, I'll encrypt you." And this is before all of the ransomware stuff that we now see regularly is happening. I said, "This to me is what's real money. Bank robbery is finished, Lennox, right? There's no money in banks anymore. It's all digital. So if I can encrypt someone's information and make them pay me digitally, that to me as a criminal seems a perfect crime. And of course, cryptocurrency was building at the same time. So once you start marrying all this stuff up to people, I was just really lucky with the people that were in the room. It was Harrods, Tesco's, all of these massive brands in the room when I spoke. And that kind of gave me the edge to be able to push stuff out there. And of course, with the production company, so my other business partner is a guy called Adam Boom, who is really a Hollywood editor. Yeah, that's what he's done. I mean, he's made massive Hollywood films like with Milos Forman. He sat with Milos Forman, if you don't know, made One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right? Which is one of the greatest all-time films of all time. Adam's got to learn all of these processes with him. So now we play all of this stuff out with lived experience in our films that educates. So this year, every single university gets Crooks on Campus, which is a film I wrote, I'm in, and produced, yeah? And now every single university in the UK gets access to that, of where we proved behavioural change. We don't just talk about it, we then go back and test it and see, what did you think there, how did you do it? Because Nicola's so good with criminology and being able to do that. So next year, I'm halfway through the next film called Rookie Crooks, right? Which is all about the youngers and how it all plays out with the youngers and what they're up to now in the fraud world, right? And so that one will go into all secondary schools at the end of 2025, we think. Yeah. It's about putting my influence within those places and also bringing those massive financial institutions, right? What I realised as a kid, when none of us get taught about finances, I was always really good with money, yeah? My mates, sometimes you're lending them money, I lend my mum money, my dad money, I lend everyone money because I've got it, right? So I'm able to do that. But I realised that, wow, like most of the people, they don't get that education of what that finance means. A few years ago, I started saying to the banks, like when I'm talking to them, I'm saying, you need to go and talk to the kids and train them at that moment of finances instead of teaching them about war. Because surely it's better as a country, we can only get better if there's more money in the bank, that everyone's saving and everyone feels that they've actually got a stake in the game. That's how you get change. Yeah, and we can only do it because we live in a corporate society, yeah? This is a capitalist society. The only way you can get change is by bringing them to it and allowing them to put their edge around it as well. So, it's a really tricky...
Yeah, and I suppose that's a huge factor for young people, I would assume, who end up getting into crime themselves. They're coming to it from a point of poverty, whether you need to survive or you're, in a situation where you're being groomed into it. Lennox, tell me a little bit about, what in your experience when you meet these young people and they're telling you how they got into crime or why they started offending, what is it that they're telling you about their lives and about why they turned to crime?
There's a variety of different reasons. Some young people have got some real horror stories of life in their family. It might be a bereavement, it might be a divorce, it can be some abuse. And for some, they come from very good families and have just got into it because they've seen the money side of it. Some young people have got into debt or have been a victim of, a member of a gang approaching them and wanting to give them a ride to school or buy them something. So it varies, and I go into prisons. I work in some prisons, and I work with the gangs there as well. And their stories are shocking, some of them, and it's trying to help them with the trauma. A lot of the young people have been through a lot of traumatic experiences. One of my clients was a child soldier, and he had to chop people's limbs off and as a child and things like that. So the level of trauma varies, and they're quite willing to share that.
And when it comes to that, I suppose, what kind of advice would you give to a young person who feels like they're trapped in a gang? Because when you're groomed into these things, it can be quite hard to leave and get away from that.
Yeah, you have to really, if you want to come away from it, then we look at your situation and how you can get away from it. Some young people, they have to come away from the social media that they were attached to and form new identities if they want to sort of be on social media. You have to come away from it. We help them look at different ways to cut ties with the gangs. Some people have moved areas, and so we look at every situation,
Its own case in kind of in isolation. Because I suppose as well, in terms of a young person who's leaving a gang or something like that, usually it's their entire identity is that family unit that they have around them. Their peers are also involved in that, and I'm sure that's quite a difficult thing to come away from, and very almost lonely at the start.
Yeah, and you have to, for some, they can't move. They have to stay in the area, and you have to show them how that they can do that in their situation and be away from the gang. It's not easy, because the gangs, if you're making money for them, I mean, one of my clients, they sat outside his house and took pictures of his family and sent it to his phone. But we were still able to help him to stay in the local area. And now he's got a successful business. He was money laundering for a gang. Now he's got a successful business. So we were able to help him to come away and do well and not be blacklisted by the banks as well.
And you've both mentioned, I suppose, in your own experiences, you both had these very kind of pivotal moments of hitting rock bottom, seeing your son in tears and yourself, this moment where you're kind of wanting to die and after having just stabbed somebody. When you kind of decide in that moment to turn your life around, I suppose almost like Alcoholics Anonymous, you kind of, I suppose, have to reckon with your past, and maybe there's a journey of forgiveness, both for yourself, possibly to forgive what you've done in the past and be able to move on. What role do you think forgiveness has kind of played in your healing journey, both in terms of the people around you forgiving your past and forgiving yourself? Maybe Tony, I'll start with you.
I guess that you have to realise that it's quite to understand crime, right? The person that's committing the crime is the person that everyone hates, right? But no one's turning it round and looking, what happened to you? Why are you like that? What's making you like that? Let's go and fix the problem before it happens instead of trying to fix it after it happens. We throw all this money after instead of going right back to, hold on. Because as a kid, I had that happen, right? They saw something was not right with me, that something was wrong, but they couldn't pick up on, there wasn't enough resources, there wasn't enough understanding of what makes someone a criminal, right? So I made a series for Channel 4 called What Makes a Murderer. Felon is actually talking this afternoon. She was the other producer with me on it, yeah? So again, it was my idea. I produced it and we co-pro'd it with a company called Dragonfly, right? It's the only ever time 3 people that commit murder submit themselves to experiments, yes? The only other time it's ever happened, yeah? And going through that process, so before they went through any of that, I went through it, yeah? Because I had to go through it with a psychologist and all that. And literally, as I was going through it, one of the psychologists triggered a load of trauma in me as we were sitting down talking. I thought I was all right. I come out of the room and me and Felon had to jump on the train to go and see John Massey in the afternoon because John was like, we was just talking to set him up to become part of the show then, right? And we got on the train to Camden, and by the time we get to the other end, I've exploded and gone mad at Felon because she's saying all this stuff about John that I want to protect him and wrap round because I've been through it and understand it. But Felon's actually saying the same thing, just in a different way. But because the trauma had all been triggered by that moment, it only comes out then. It's a lifelong thing. I still say to people every single day, don't go, it doesn't change. I'm still me. I still think about being sexually abused. I still think about all them things that happen. You can't help it. Like, it's inevitable. I didn't mean to be that person. Yeah. It happened, yeah? Like, and so as long as we continue to keep blaming that person without actually looking at what's happening, yeah? Do you know how hard it is to get out of a gang? People understand what a gang's really like. It's not just something where you're in a job. You're not at work. You've known these people most of your lives. Yeah, this is real stuff that affects real people. We have Crips and Bloods in this country now because gangs are becoming a massive thing. Let's go and fix the bloody problem at the beginning instead of having to go and fix it with more police, more social services, more intervention for these people, you know? Give them something to look up to, because if you're them, what are you looking up to?
Yeah, so
that's the reality
I suppose when most young people are starting to kind of first touch off the system and sort of enter it, it is in that, you know, case where they've been maybe caught doing something, and, you know, prison, if not for rehabilitation, you know, what is the point? I want to ask you, Lennox, did your time in prison or your experience in prison kind of shape how you moved on?
I've been in and out of prison for 21 years, and I made a lot of mistakes because I was sexually abused and raped as a child, and I had rage. And when I thought people did injustice to me, it would flip a switch in me and I would go for them if they didn't try to resolve it peacefully. And I didn't care who anybody was. So I had to fight in prison. I had to fight murderers and various armed robbers, people that could look after themselves. And for me, it was a kill or be killed situation. I was always looking at life sentences. Prison at times toughened me up, but it was only when I really wanted to change that I started to take from prison elements of it that were going to be helpful. I had some therapeutic help. I went to a therapeutic prison. One of the things a judge said in his closing remarks was, you need to have some therapy. So they transferred me from Dartmoor to Grendon prison. And the same type of person who, I was on a session with a guy who was like the abuser, who abused me and raped me as a child. And I've watched other prisoners jump off their seats to try and kill paedophiles and sex offenders, rapists. And this man, in my therapeutic session with other guys, was trying to tell me, you know, I was like the person who abused you and it wasn't your fault and all that. And it was just really weird. When I really wanted to change, because if I didn't want to change and he was telling me that, he wouldn't have been around. I saw myself, you know, as violently evil. I would think of things to do to hurt you, and I would have taken him out. But when I wanted to change, I was able to see things differently and think, oh, you know, I need to stop blaming myself. So prison did become a help, you know, but it wasn't enough. I had to go and get further help. I went and got other help in the UK, psychological, therapeutic help, and I went to America, and the help I got, it was like having surgery. It was like removing a tumor or cancer, and that allowed me to be so free. I can, of it today. I listen to other abuse victims, and I think, you still got that file in the back of your mind. You're not quite free yet, but I feel I have a type of freedom. Still remember everything, and I've been able to let go. I can't make everyone pay. I've had to come to a realization that I need to let go. If I carry it, it's going to eat away at me, it's going to destroy me, and I've had to find a way to let it go.
It seems like a very cathartic experience. Even watching your manner and the way you speak about it change from, when you're discussing this letting go, your body language, you're loosening up, your voice is changing. It seems like you're kind of experiencing it again, because it's a huge burden, that's been on your shoulders, and to let that go. And both of you have obviously had these huge life stories. You've changed things for the better. You both have written books on your life. Tony's here is for anyone who would like to steal 30 million pound. He has a manual here for you. It's called The Big Con, and it's by Tony Sales. The audiobook is out as well, which is incredible. We will run some of the introduction chapters perhaps on Crime World on our podcast soon. We also have Lennox's book, Breaking Better. I met Lennox at Crime Con in 2022, and he gave me a copy of his book, which I read and he signed. And this book as well, we ran the first chapter on the introduction on the podcast. So they're there for you if you'd like to go and listen to their stories from their perspective. Obviously, this is a very short conversation, and I think it's important to, there's incredible backstories to both of you, and they read so well. So Lennox and Tony, thank you so much. Can I please get a huge round of applause for these wonderful guests?
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.